All right, what's up, everyone? I'm Chris Ronzio, and this is another episode of the Organized Chaos Show. Today, we've got Aaron Gopp. Aaron, thanks for being here.
No problem. Happy to be here.
This is exciting. So, you are a product guy,
Yes. Yep.
and your company is called Patter, right?
That's right.
Cool. Where are you logging in from?
I'm in Tucson, just about an hour and a half south of you.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So,
Yep.
for anyone that's watching, I'm in Scottsdale. Tucson is like a nice car ride away through absolutely no man's land.
Exactly
But
right.
every time I drive down there, I love going there. It's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to talk about your business. Why don't you give everybody just a quick overview of what Patter is?
Yeah. Patter's a software application that allows companies to build a brand and culture that people love. We're essentially a guided platform that gives founders the chance to develop and integrate their brand and culture. And we've built a collaborative platform. So the idea is to bring the entire team and let them engage in this process.
Got it. So is it typically that you're selling to founders to are they the ones that kick off the project with you, or who do you sell to?
Yeah, we do sell to founders. We're trying to drink our own Kool-Aid about finding a very specific market. It's the market that we know, and it's also the market that I think really needs this pain point. Those early stage founders that are having some of those growing pains. So that's where we've launched. But of course, we're so new that everything's an experiment right now.
So give us the like orientation or the context of like how new are you? How big is the team? What stage are you at?
Super early. So we officially launched. Well, I'll give you a little bit of background. So I was working with another company doing product for another startup about a year ago today, as a matter of fact. And we hit some huge issues with our branding. Um, and I had a really good friend that was a brand strategist. And so I brought her in and she sat with us for a little bit, and it just kind of blew my mind that we didn't know what we were doing. And so then I advised some other startups, so I brought this group of six or seven other startups in. She did a workshop for us. Everybody's just thinking like, wow, how is this not a thing? um, Fast forward about 6 months, I basically had that nagging like, why doesn't this exist, or why
And these
why
are
haven't I
like
found
brand
it?
workshops.
Not just brand workshops, but something that's self-serve. I know that I can go pay a consultant, right, to like come in and help me build my brand for thousands or tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
But I want like the HubSpot of brand building, right? Like I want the Canva of brand building. I want to be able to do it myself and manage it on an ongoing basis. And so it nagged me to the point that I basically almost pitched her, almost literally, like, I need somebody with brand experience. I'm a product guy. Let's do this. So that was in the fall of last year. We did a whole bunch of experimentation, some MVPs, really lightweight Google Sheets types things, and officially March 16th, which might be the worst day in history to launch a company, but we
Wow.
actually went live on March 16th of this year. So that's how new we are.
That's crazy. I think it was like March 18th or something that our company went totally remote. So you
There
were
you
like
go.
in the thick of it.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
All right. So why brand? Like, why is brand so important? I know a lot of founders, when I used to consult, I had to convince them to even care about their logo
Mhm.
or their website, or most of them would just snap like a Times New Roman word on a business card and a website. So why the passion for brand?
Uh, because it was something that, I'm kind of that typical type A founder, right? I went out and I've been studying, all the different aspects of how to build a business, but brand was the thing that never really sat with me. I think I'm a little more logical than I am creative, and so it always kind of scared me. It was always a black box. But when I actually started to uncover that, brand became something so much deeper than just like the logo or the image, right? Like now it's all of a sudden your message, and then it becomes your personality, and then it becomes your values and your core and your guiding principles, and then it bleeds almost directly into the culture and the team and what your team believes in and why they do what they do, right? So all of a sudden, as I'm peeling back these layers, I'm like, this is the lifeblood of an organization, right? You might have an amazing product, but to make something that's enduring, it has to have a strong core, a really strong foundation. And
Mhm.
that was kind of that awakening. Like, this is critical, this is important, and it's overlooked a lot of, just like you said, right? Like, I've got a logo, my brand's great, on to the races, right? And it's like, no, maybe not. And so that was the point in which we really thought that there might be something here.
Yeah, I think for most people, when they hear brand, they might think logo,
Hmm.
website,
Yeah.
maybe marketing collateral. I actually had a client that was a brand consultant that did everything from brand workshops to menu designs for restaurants to experience designs for new employees to, all
Yeah.
this stuff. And it really gave me an appreciation of how deep brand goes, because before I felt the same way. Like, your logo should at least be gradient and look nice and look like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
wasn't made in the 70s. And but that was like the extent of it. And
Yeah.
so now,
Yeah.
I get it. So um if you're selling to founders, I mean, is there an uphill education battle to try to teach people that it's important before they're willing to just buy, or have you found that this is something people will buy when they see it?
Yeah, this is one of the big hurdles. This is where experts like you might be able to help me out. Train your being and it may be a similar thing. Like this is what we're trying to figure out. How do you convince a founder that this is something that would materially make their company better if they don't necessarily realize it? And I'm sure you've had some experience in that same thing. The conversation, just like you'd mentioned, hey, what's the strength of your brand? What's the strength of your culture? How tied in is everybody? How consistent is it? Oh, no, no, we're awesome. We paid somebody like 2 grand to build our logo, so we're all set. And then, so yeah, there's a huge education piece to this that we're really trying to overcome. To some, it resonates really quickly. We found some folks that have actively been searching for more information, how to do something, how to do it themselves. But it's definitely not common. And again, that's one of our hurdles. That's one of the points in which we really need to discover and work through.
All right, well, we'll definitely get into that. So just to recap then, so is it you and a co-founder right now?
I actually have, it's just me and 2 co-founders. So we have myself, the product person, and the MBA. Teresa, one of our co-founders, she's our brand specialist and our marketing specialist. She had focused in brand identity, which is awesome. She understands that kind of deeper level of brand. And
Yeah.
then we have a CTO on board as well.
Okay. So you mentioned that education and like making people feel the urgency is one of the
Mhm.
hurdles. Are there other known hurdles that you're up against right now?
The other big hurdle, and again, you might have some comments on this, is just really delivering that value through an application, through a software application. Um, there's about 1 million features that we could build, just like we started talking about everything that has to do with brand and culture, but we're really trying to focus in on what are those core features that really serve value, and really solve that pain point early on, and really trying to focus in and nail that down. It's been tough for us.
So talk us through your pricing. Like, what are the packages? How do you charge? Because you said you're a SaaS application, but
Hmm. Yeah.
is it something you pay ongoing for?
Yeah, it is. We want to do a subscription model. And again, like I said, everything's an experiment, right? So right now, um, we're kind of doing a little bit of like the Zoom or the Slack model. What we want to do is put a super valuable free tier out there for everybody to use. And so our first module is what we call brand discovery. And it's just an entirely guided platform, completely free. Anybody can go out and really build out their brand. We have a brand culture, brand image, and a brand voice piece of this. And so they can start to fill in different areas. This is not a per seat type thing. So you can invite your entire team. They can all go in and reference and review this information. And so we wanted to do this really valuable kind of free tier, and then from there, we've got paid tiers. So the next tier up is an implementation module. This helps to kind of guide through the task-based, sessions of like, actually implementing and setting calendars and tasks to follow up and actually make sure that your brand's kind of on an ongoing basis move through. And then eventually, we haven't developed this out yet, but eventually we want to get into a full management suite, which would allow for surveys and feedback and metrics, dashboards, things like that. So you can really keep a finger on the pulse of everything that you're doing.
So if you had competitors, where's
Mhm.
the matrix of competitors? Because I know that there's asset management
Yep.
tools and there's
Yeah.
brand management. So like, where do you fit among those things?
Yeah, that's a tough one because I do think that this is kind of an emerging market, right? If you're to go look at like a SaaS suite, there's a lot out there in terms of, marketing automation and CRM and, workforce management, things like that. But you don't see like a brand development suite. So yeah, companies like Frontify and some of those digital asset managers, that's partly where we are. And I think that's really the pragmatic piece. Qualtrics and some others have some great surveying and kind of employee engagement pieces. Um, where we stand is kind of in the middle of all of it. We want to, we see this really strong bridge between brand and culture. We kind of call it purpose. The purpose sits at the core, and then your brand and your culture really attached to that. One external facing, one internal facing. So we kind of want to be in the middle of that storm. It's hard to define where we would be with that competition, right? Because their feature sets kind of dance all around that. We want to kind of be that space in the middle.
So if you had like an avatar of an ideal customer,
Mhm.
do you know how big they are? Do you know what stage they're at?
We're definitely experimenting through that. What we're looking at is what we're calling it right now is pre-seed. Um, so high growth minded. We love local, we love small businesses, but we're looking at companies that really have aspirations to grow to, thousands or tens of thousand employees. But really in those early stages, we might call it 20 to maybe 100 employees. Again, high growth, probably right now we're seeing a lot of attention in the consumer space. um, a lot of companies are really battling for attention, and so that brand becomes really critical at that point, but also growing the staff as well. So we're getting attention from those that are actually hiring up, and that culture is now becoming one of those things that they're really paying attention to.
So I share the same kind of passion for the small business audience,
Uh-huh.
that 10 people to 100 people. I mean, that's our sweet spot. But I think the difference between what you're doing and what we're doing is with Trainual, you always have changing policies and procedures, and you're
Hmm.
always hiring, or you've got turnover, and there's always like new knowledge transfer that needs to happen. And so there's an ongoing utility to the tool. Whereas with brand, the ongoing utility of your brand doesn't really happen until you're a big enough company where you've
Yeah,
got multiple people in the company representing you outwardly. So
exactly.
you've either got people that are speaking, or you're putting out a lot of content, or you've got PR. And a company that's pre-seed or 10 or 20 people like does not have that.
Yeah.
So my outside looking in opinion is that you would be more of a mid-market company, because the number of companies that grow from 20 to 1,000 where they're really going to leverage your big tool is so few.
Yeah, that's
Like,
true. That's
but
true.
but the companies that go from 500 to 1,500, there's a lot more of those. They've already
Yeah.
kind of passed those hurdles. And so like where we introduce Trainual is where a customer is outgrowing their way to do things today, and they're experiencing this pain point. And so
Hmm.
for us, I'll just use it as an example.
Please. Yeah.
Like when people are growing a business and they're just 5 people or 8 people or 10 people, like they're probably fine with Google Docs, and
Hmm.
they're like, that's where they're writing things down. It's only when you've got multiple people doing the same role in your company, or when you're hiring multiple people a month, that you start repeating yourself, or you start to see inconsistencies between who does what, and you feel the need to formalize it and write it down. So that's our entry point, because that's where the pain point for the customer is. Whereas for you, the entry point, I would imagine, would be a bigger company, because the pain point is like, we need to get wrap our arms around our brand,
Hmm.
and like the person that's feeling like that is more likely like a marketing manager or a marketing director. And you've got to be at a big enough company where they've got the business, they've got the sales and marketing engine, and they're producing PR, and they're starting to feel the pain point of like, wow, our brand is not being accurately represented. And like, how dare they use that old deck? And like, why did this sheet internally look like so crappy when we just designed this beautiful thing last month? Like the
Hmm.
size of business where they're feeling those pain points. And maybe, I'm guessing, but I read in the bio that you came from like a Fortune 10 company.
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
feel that inconsistency?
That one, yeah, definitely. Except for that might have been like too far on the extreme.
Yeah.
The company I work for, I think last I remember, we're at, I think 40 or 50,000 employees. Like, so we're so far removed from all,
Totally.
and they have so many subsidiaries with so many brand specifications that that might be like beyond like
Yeah.
where we're at. But you're absolutely right, though. Once you get to so many people, yeah, trying to keep that consistency, trying to keep that same voice becomes really difficult. And I think you're exactly right. When
But
it's
that's
a
where the
small
ROI is on like an ongoing basis. It's
uh-huh.
different. Like if your whole business was selling brand workshops to like discover your brand and pay us a
Hmm.
few $1,000s to do a brand exercise with you, then you could sell to smaller companies because it's a one-time fee that they get some ROI from. But then on a month-to-month basis, they're putting out fires and not really revisiting the brand. You
Yeah.
know, that it's very much a reactive kind of thing. Whereas a bigger
100%.
company that has more bandwidth and resources, and maybe it's a marketing department with at least 5 people or at least 10 people. I don't know how big it is,
Hmm.
but like there's a size of company where now that becomes someone's job. Like we have a content manager and a copywriter, and part of what they're doing is assessing voice and tone across our
Okay. Yeah.
website
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
our, but like you don't do that when you're a much
Yeah.
smaller company. And so it's, there's, I don't know, there's a threshold that a company's got to be at least so big, or at least a marketing department that's so big,
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's actually, you've hit on a couple of areas that we've heard, but really just trying to get our finger on and trying to figure out, how to align with those pain points. But like for instance, you're exactly right. Like if you're trying to assess voice and then deliver that to like a customer success team and making sure that then that voice is is propagated out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. If you're the founder also taking calls, then guess what? Like the voice is integrated. Like you don't need to study it. It
Right.
it happens, right?
Have it. It's pretty natural when you're like a few people.
Yeah,
The
that's
benefit
true.
you have though is because you've worked at such a big company, you
Mhm.
can cherry pick the things you really liked about how they controlled brand and
Yeah.
strip away the red tape that's irrelevant for your customers. But you can say like, if I saw how it was at a 50,000 person company, like how do I water that down for a 500 person company
Yeah.
and introduce something that the market doesn't have? It was again similar for Trainual. We have, there's big companies that they have these huge integrated HR systems and LMS systems and these things that cost 6 figures a year. No small business is going to pay for those.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what they were called until like a year into the business, and people started asking me about like upmarket competitors. I didn't know
Yeah.
those things existed,
Yeah.
but I was able to like understand what they do at big companies and cut away the crap that smaller companies don't need.
Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
so thinking about your application, you said there's a million features you could deliver. What's the one core feature that people would rely on you for?
I think right now, and again, constant experiment. So I hate to speak with so much confidence, but I think right now it is being able to integrate that kind of collaborative model. Um, it's not widespread, but we definitely have some folks that we talk to that are very interested in not building their brand and more so probably their culture in a silo. They want feedback. They feel like they want to be a transparent company. So they want their entire team to have a part of this conversation, which is something that they've never really done before. So when we talk about that feature, that the ability to actually bring everybody in, have them review, provide feedback on a very, ongoing basis, that feels like it's resonating. It's not something so far that's been widely used, but it's one of those features that we're bumping up the backlog a little bit.
Well, let me give you an idea. We
Hmm.
use a tool called Culture Amp for all of our internal surveys, and it's more of an HR tool, but
Yeah.
it does it's like a people check-ins thing, and we use it for performance reviews and,
Yeah.
and manager 180s and that sort of thing. But I don't know that they have any kind of brand element. We've never really done a brand audit, and if you had some way, maybe it was a free lead gen thing,
Hmm.
some way for you to send out this brand audit to a whole company and then produce this like free brand report about how, how outdated is your brand, or how consistent is your brand, or something like that, to
Yeah.
give people like a brand score. You mentioned wanting to be like the HubSpot of brand. I
Yeah.
think they did something very similar with your website, with how your speed and your SEO and your.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember that, but something like that could be a great lead gen tool for you, because anybody that fills that out has the pain point. So like you're giving this thing away, and it's only attracting people that would be good customers for you, and so then you give them the value, and right away you're able to say like, oh, and we can solve this. Like your score was a 64 out of 100. Like get on our plan and you'll be at a 95 in 6 months.
Yeah.
Like, but you gotta show them the gap.
I love that. And that's actually that, one of the other questions that I have down on my list here is really hitting that pain point, and without, that kind of overload, that cognitive overload of like, here, develop your brand, right? Like, we're struggling with that right now. And that, I think you kind of answered that right there. How do we introduce the value without, especially right in this like pandemic state where everybody's just got so much on their mind. The idea of like, here, evaluate your entire brand just feels so heavy. And I don't think that level of weight is really interesting to people.
Yeah.
But something like a brand audit, brand survey, yeah, that's actually an incredible idea.
So I don't know if this exists yet technically, but I just thought of it. So like what would be really cool is if I could upload a PowerPoint presentation or upload a document or something, and it would just scan it and tell it like how well it matches our brand. That to me would be a real product driven solution,
Yeah.
where because that's the problem that like, I mentioned big enough companies will just start to experience. And it's something where like, we have people on our team that will be invited to speak on a panel or something, and they've got to submit a headshot and a bio, and we run it through our marketing department, make sure it's all good. But if there was a tool that you could just pass things through, that it's preloaded with your brand standards, and it's almost like what's the is it Yoast, the plugin on WordPress that
Yeah,
like
the SEO plugin.
yeah, like imagine that for brand,
Yeah.
or like Grammarly for brand would be so cool, because then as a company, you're maintaining your brand standards, but it's actively checking how things
Exactly.
compare. So like, I haven't seen that. I don't know if that exists, but that would be
Yeah.
something that would be worth like an ongoing subscription.
Oh no, absolutely. And actually that's one of the other pain points that we haven't really nailed down yet. But when we talk about brand, we talk about effectiveness, and then we talk about consistency, right? Like you had even mentioned that you have people reviewing, your tone and your sentiment and things like that. So being consistent is one of the biggest issues that I think people run into. I mean, that's a strong solution, that's for sure.
But for you to sell this,
Hmm.
like you mentioned the education hurdle at the beginning. Like it's much easier to sell something when it's replacing an expense that people already have,
Hmm.
rather than when it's a new expense. And so
Yeah.
when you're selling to a small company, you're trying to tell them, hey, it's worth your time and energy and bandwidth to spend money on managing your brand, but they're not doing that yet. So it's a really hard sale. Whereas a big company or a bigger company that does have a marketing team, you could
Hmm.
say, hey, your people are spending 40 hours a month reviewing copy and whatever, and assessing, making sure things match your brand guidelines. Like, buy our tool and it does that instantly, and like, then it's an easy sale, because then like if you were pitched me with that, I could say, oh, it's going to cut this many hours out of their time, and everything we upload, like if it is below this score, it'll flag them so they can go in and suggest what needs to change, and it goes back to the person that submitted it. Like that bypasses the internal brand police that I already have and
Yeah.
saves me money. So then it's worth investing.
No, absolutely. And that's actually, that's one of the areas that we're looking for as well, as an entry point um, into an organization. I'd mentioned kind of that, like that Slack model of a really strong free tier, a very valuable tier, whatever that looks like. And then just piling value on top of that. But the hard part is an entry point, and that, something like that, at least I really like what you said about finding an existing expense or an existing kind of productivity suck that already exists. I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, it makes the sale easier,
Hmm.
because when we do webinars, or when we used to do a lot more demos when we were just starting, and the
Hmm.
feedback I heard from people, or like the talk track was always, how are you training now? And like they would talk through, well, always someone in the office sits with every new person we hire, and it spends
Yeah.
this much time. Or we've got these documents spread all over our drive, and every time we go through and pick all the ones that are for that person, and we send it to them, and we spend 4 hours writing up the new stuff. And it's like, if I can attach that pain or that time that they're already spending to
Yeah.
how our solution is cheaper, then it's a much easier sale. But it's hard when you're trying to convince people like, you should invest in your brand. That's
Yeah.
not your customer.
Yeah. So let me actually, if I could ask you to unpack that just a tiny bit. When you were early on, when you were working through your messaging, um, I don't know, and maybe you can answer, did people know that that was a pain point, or did they feel like, was it oh my God, I hate this onboarding because I got to go to Google and then I have to have people shadowed and blah, blah, blah. Or was it like, no, we got it. We have a shadow, they'll shadow for a couple of days and then we'll figure it out. We pluck it from Google Sheets. We're good. Did you struggle with companies that were, yeah, no, we're fine, we've got it in place, even though you're cringing because you know what the opportunity is, but they feel excited, they're like, oh no, we've already nailed this down.
We didn't talk to them unless they identified the problem, because that's what your marketing does. You,
Gotcha.
your your
Okay.
your marketing is trying to catch people that have the problem top of mind. So for us, when we first started, our we have a few different taglines we've used, but the most popular one was and is get your business out of your brain. And so when we were selling to founders, I was sponsoring this entrepreneur group before starting Trainual, and I was just kind of surveying them and talking about like what would happen if like you got sick and couldn't go to the business anymore,
Mm,
like how would that affect the business? And the
yeah.
conversation was always like, well, everything's stuck in my head, so like that would be really bad for the company. And I was like,
Okay.
well, I want to help you get your business out of your brain, and that resonated. So I
Okay.
started using that. And then the next thing we did was look for like who is our customer already exposed to, like what groups are they in, what books do
Hmm.
they read, what like what has already awakened them to the awakened them to this problem. Because for a small company that's like trying to invest in their systems and processes, the first thing they do is not Google Trainual. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they're doing something top of funnel. And so those things are like they're joining entrepreneurship groups, they're in masterminds, they're in they're reading books, they're hiring a EOS coach with traction. They're, and so like if we can identify, here's the people that have taken the first step
Hmm.
to start solving this problem, like those are our customers, because we don't have to educate them on why this is important. We
Gotcha.
just have to attract them and say, hey, look, here's this, you're thinking about this already, here's this easy thing that relates to the messaging in your head, and then they click through.
Gotcha.
So for you, like the pain points we just talked about were your like your brand is really inconsistent, or like, are you reviewing brand stuff left and right for tone? Like does your company suck at sticking to the brand standards? Like
Okay. Yeah.
there's,
Yeah.
there's a pain point for someone in the marketing department that's like trying to force this through at their company, and it's not working. And if you can make their job easier, assist them, they're the ones that are going to be like, oh, check out Pattern, I found this thing, it's going to save me 10 hours a month, this is what we need.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And I'm definitely picking up on that, like that ROI or that savings.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we need to lean into a little bit.
Yeah. How so I know you're early and technically only started like a month ago, right?
Uh-huh.
But do you have case studies or examples of customers that have used your tool or used your workshops and found success yet?
Yeah, we did. The first couple months, the fall of last year, I mentioned we'd done kind of an MVP. What we did was, it was almost like a brand development workshop though. So it was very, very early on. We've tried to move upstream from that, but yeah, we had 12 or 13 companies that we basically just sat with, replicated what our UI and eventually became, but just replicated it in Google Sheets, and then just like did it like a shared drive and said, okay, start filling this out. But we have a couple of companies that have come away with kind of the same result that I had, which was, holy cow, like this onion, there are a lot of layers to this onion. I had no clue. Um, we haven't taken it to that like end state of like, okay, we've gotten them to the promised land, but we have at least some movement towards, wow, this is a thing.
So another thing I'd suggest, which was huge for us, was we had, Trainual started as a prototype in my consulting business. And
Hmm.
so I had the benefit of, for a couple of years, using it with my consulting clients and getting their feedback and getting them to succeed with it, so that when we launched Trainual as an actual business, I have these case studies front and center. And I was like, here's this company,
Yeah.
they used it. Look how it helped them. Here's this company, totally different industry, totally different size. Here's how they used it. Here's this other company, totally different geography. And for someone new looking at your product, that is really crucial for them to
Mhm.
get that like external validation that,
Yeah.
there's something here. And I was scrolling through your website and didn't see any other logos or brands, or I think like if you're trying to sell something, you need people that have been there before. So if I was you, I would take your the 13 company pilot you did,
Mhm.
and turn it into an online survey that walks them through the same process or whatever,
Mhm.
and try to do it for like 100 companies or 250 companies for free,
Okay.
and like blast it out as this. We're doing like free brand workshops, and they're going to be smaller companies probably,
Mhm.
or you could do free brand audits and they're slightly bigger companies, like maybe
Right.
that's better. But you want to do something to for free get this like this foundation under you, because then what you'll learn is you'll see what they got the value out of. You'll see what they didn't really care about. You'll see, if you mentioned 13 companies and a couple came away feeling like you did, like you want all 13 to come away feeling
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
did. And so like I would really try to run reps on that and figure out like what is the thing that people care about. Because then once you get whatever 50 companies or 20 companies that have found success, and here's what they got value out of, then that's what you put the package around.
Gotcha.
You
Yeah.
say, this is what we do. You ask them for video testimonials and stuff, and you put those on your website, and you show their logos, and you're like, here's the brands we've helped. You could even, if you're doing this with 100 companies or something, like part of filling out your survey can be like checking a box. It's okay to use our logo. We'll link back to your website. Everybody wants that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like if I went to your website and there's 100 logos on there of all the companies you've helped, then
Yeah.
I'm way more likely to put my info in.
Yeah. We're already. Yeah. No, that's true. Actually, a little bit of that validation and trust. Yeah. And we definitely don't have that at this point. But again, that's part of that, like, I guess, chicken and egg. But I like that idea of offering kind of a lightweight service, something that can get that kind of aha moment triggered, and then go from there.
And it doesn't need to be the eventual version of your product or whatever. Like think of it as your MVP brand service or whatever it is, where, even if you're doing like one-on-one calls with these companies to consult them about your brand, or your co-founder is, just get them some value to where
Mhm.
they say like, Patter knows brand better than anyone I've talked to, and then you use that quote because you're just trying to build your own
Yeah.
brand, I guess. Like you're trying to build some story and some credibility behind what you're doing, because if it's just a website with nothing on it,
Mhm.
no one's going to buy into it. But if you've got a little momentum and it's like,
Yeah.
here's all the companies we serve, here's what they're saying. We use our customers' testimonials become the copy on our website and in our ads,
Oh,
and
that's
it's
genius.
like we
Yeah.
use their own language against them.
Oh,
um,
yeah.
or even in your free surveys, I'm trying to remember, it might have been like Pat Flynn from SPI that I got this from. But in your surveys that you send out, where they ask them what their biggest problem with brand is,
Okay.
that's like the number one thing you could ask them. Because then if you're seeing people say like, it's just that, my company doesn't take brand seriously or something like that, that
Yeah.
becomes your leading copy on your website, where you
Yeah.
say like why doesn't your company take brand seriously? Because then the customer that, you're like inside their head, when they hit your website and they see that, they're like, yes, like I feel the
Yeah.
same way.
That's
What, like,
me. Yeah. I gotcha.
yeah.
No, that's actually a great idea. So let me see if I can just understand a little bit more. So the idea would be provide some level of value, distribute this as widely as possible, get as many people on as we can, and then use that kind of twofold to hone in on that value proposition so that we can understand where we can deliver that value better, but also really build that army of, like, of advocates for us. Use that to build out the copy, use that as social validation, and just really kind of, I guess we're manufacturing some momentum at that point. But um, That's perfect. Okay.
Yeah, because if you mentioned a couple times you're experimenting and iterating, and if you're
Hmm.
doing that just by updating your website and like trying to catch people with new bait, that go back, go
Yeah.
back a few layers. Doesn't Your website doesn't matter unless you're doing
Hmm.
like large scale ads. Your website doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So like the earliest building blocks are you've got to get some positive momentum and case studies of people that really love the service. And then you use that to, in your own networks, leverage this initial launch offering. And you say
Yeah.
hey, we did this great work for these people. Here's what they said. Now we're opening it up. It's out of beta, or it's starting beta. And
Yeah.
like, we're looking for 10 more people. And now you're bringing in like 10 strangers
Yeah.
that you can get a little more value. And then it's like you get a little bit closer to fine tuning the messaging and the offer on your website. And then you start running ads to your website to
Gotcha.
like real cold traffic. But it's
Yeah.
just a couple stages.
Yeah. And we definitely have it. We know that right now we're not honed in enough to really start with that kind of ad running or anything like that. Eventually we'll get there, but trying to figure out how to even just get to that first cohort, I think, is where we need to be.
With Trainual, for the 3 months or so before we launched, it was our website was just a lead capture form, one page. You couldn't even scroll or do anything, and it
Yeah.
said, I think it said the tagline: "Get your business out of your brain." Like Trainual version 2 coming soon, and put your email for like the launch announcement or something.
Yeah.
And we captured like hundreds of emails of people that would see that and be interested enough, and so that might be another thing where if you don't have a lot of traffic to your website yet, you might
Mhm.
strip it all back, and it might just be like, what's your mission for the company? Or
Mhm.
like, like Patter, helps uh your brand. I don't know. I'm trying to spin an idea up, but
Yeah.
like like uh like make your brand live on, or make your brand, make your brand your brand. I don't know. So like, there's something I
I
can't
gotcha.
I
No,
can't
no,
get it
I
right
hear
now,
you.
but it's like this
Yeah.
this like statement that people can identify with, and just say, like, learn more. Because otherwise, if you don't know your copy yet, then the features and the stuff that you list on your website could
Mhm.
be turning people off. It could be selling them away.
Yeah.
If you don't know your packages yet, don't have a packages page. Just like, you want to get as much in the top of the funnel to learn from customers at the beginning.
Yeah. No, that's actually, we're looking at it right now. This is why I'm reaching out to folks like you and whatnot, because we're seeing that, our bounce rates are huge, our defection rates are huge, even people that get on the app. And so we're kind of in this middle ground of, we don't want to just sit on our hands. So we want to build something and at least get something tangible out there. But at the same time, we're still figuring out our value proposition.
Mm.
So, it's that wonderful startup dance that we're in the middle of right now.
What'd be cool is like, if your website was just a poll. It was like, what's your biggest brand problem? We're building
Yeah.
something for you, and you just click
Right.
one of the
Just
things, and then
hit a
it's like,
slider, something like that. Yeah. We're actually, you're now kind of the second person that's got some really great experience in this space to kind of talk about that survey. So um, I think there's something fun with that too. I think, that idea of like putting a poll or something front and center, I think there might be something to that, just getting people to engage, using it for our purposes to learn and understand a little bit better.
yeah.
Um, Win-win, make it fun, talk about your company.
Yeah. Another thing you can do is, like, through all this COVID-19 stuff, we wanted to help people with policies, work from home policies, emergency response policies, the things that they might not have in their business, and
Hmm.
and not only restrict that to people who had Trainual accounts. So we have like a template library in our platform that people can
Hmm.
use, but we spun these templates out as Google Docs that are just public, and we listed them on the website and sent them out and said, anybody that needs these, like, here's some value.
Yeah, take them.
One thing you could maybe do is, how do you define brand? What does a complete brand look like? What does a brand guidelines deck look like? Or what does a brand, there's probably something that
Hmm.
you could package together and say, we're the brand experts. Here's what a great one looks like. Use this as a template for your own company. or, and but the mental, the subliminal thing there is like, if you can't do this or don't want to do this yourself, that's when you hire us or our tool to help build this.
Yeah.
But if you give them an example, then at least you're starting to get the right kind of traffic to the site.
Yeah. That's true. And I've got this written down now a couple of times, the qualified. I think that's huge. Just casting a wide net. We've tried to be targeted, um, but I think going deeper than just stage of company or even vertical. I think we need to get more into that. Just like you said, they've self-selected into this kind of ethos of I'm ready to go do blank, whatever that might be.
Are you planning to go down a funding path, or are you bootstrapping the business, or what's your plan?
We're bootstrapping now. I'm definitely not, you know, I'm not anti, equity fundraising or anything like that. I definitely want to get to a point in which we can use that capital as a weapon as opposed to being dependent on it. So we are bootstrapping and plan to until we get traction that puts us to a point where we actually have some control in the way that we decide where we want to go.
Yeah.
Again, I heard your talk at Phoenix Startup Week, and I love the approach that you guys took. You invested in yourselves, you invested in your own growth until you got to the point in which that capital is now an asset to you and not, something that drives your company.
Yeah.
That's the model that I think we're going to go after as well.
Yeah, I think what I'm realizing more now even is it doesn't necessarily have to be revenue traction, but it has to
Hmm.
be you're providing some value and customers are loving you.
Hmm.
And so even in your case, if you told me you had 2 paying customers today, or you told me you had 200 people that filled out a free survey, I feel like the free survey is more
Yeah.
traction, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So like think about just how you get volume of companies that you're learning from, because whether you're doing it yourself or bringing in outside money, it's the more companies that you're going to work with, the more you're refining your package, the further ahead you are on that timeline.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes a ton of sense.
All right,
Um,
well, we're wrapping up. Any final questions or things I could help with?
um, No, I don't think so. I mean, this has all been the tactical stuff is really the stuff that I was really eager to kind of hear your input on. And again, just a little bit of the commiseration, hearing what you guys went through with Trainual is helpful, especially being an Arizona company. Actually, let me ask you very quickly before we wrap up. Just launching in Arizona. Had you ever considered trying to go to a different tech hub, or were you happy and satisfied with growing in the Scottsdale, Phoenix area?
Totally happy. I mean,
Yeah.
I grew up in between Boston and Chicago, so I've been at bigger cities. I moved here 10 years ago, and I feel like the support of the Arizona community
Hmm.
is special because it is kind of an up and coming underdog sort of place,
Okay.
whereas like when you're in a bigger market, sometimes it can be harder to get meetings and get intros, and when you're in a smaller market and you're doing something cool, people
Yeah.
are trying to rally around you. So I feel like being here was an asset. Um, I also think, like Trainual, we have customers in 130 countries now. So it's like, it really
Yeah.
doesn't matter where you are when you're building a SaaS business. So as long as you've got the right core team, that's
Yeah.
what's important.
Awesome. That's wonderful. Good. Glad to hear it.
So don't move. You don't have to move.
Yeah.
All right, cool, Aaron. Well, this has been fun. Thank you so much for coming on and being open and sharing. And
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody that's listening will go check out Pattr and be up on looking for what's to come from you in the branding space. So thanks
That's
again.
nice. Awesome. Thank you, Chris.
All right, and thanks everyone for joining in on another weekly episode of Organized Chaos. If you know anyone that wants to talk about their business, whether they're starting or scaling, please put them in touch. They can reach out here on YouTube, on LinkedIn, really any platform, email, just get a hold of me or someone at Trainual, and we'd love to have you on. Thanks again for being here. We'll see you next week.